have no idea where this will lead us, but I have a definite feeling it will be a place both wonderful and strange.
Hello, and welcome to the wonderful and strange Twin Peaks Logcast. I am Kalil, and I have two different introductions today because I couldn't decide. So, Professor, I want to know which one you like better. Number one is, with me today is the lethal bullet to my Emery Battis. Or, number two, with me today is the kitchen meal to my Toad. Which do you prefer, Professor?
Bullet Battis. Bullet
Perfect.
Battis. Bullet Battis.
If you cannot tell by this dramatic recreation that you are now hearing with your audio lobes, we're looking at episode 1, Laura's Secret Diary.
Oh.
Written by Jerry Stahl, Harley Payton, Robert Engels, and Mark Frost. Directed by Todd Holland.
I will never, not be just confused on, how some of these title conventions go. I'm sure there might be, a bigger picture feeling that I'll get in the future. But regardless, it's like noticing a small detail and being like, oh, yes, let's see what we got at the Double R today. Oh, burgers. Today will be Burger, the episode. So...
okay, but the Laura's Secret Diary
was in one scene.
Is a big element. I do think it is weird, though, because the last episode was the reveal of it.
Yes.
And it almost was a cliffhanger reveal that this episode did, barely anything with.
Yeah, we got about...
It continued what had already been started, and that's about it.
Yeah, we got a little reading, but we'll get to that later. Regardless, still, it's a fun time with naming conventions.
Sure.
You said that this was, what was the director again?
Todd Holland.
And is this his first director role in Twin Peaks, the first episode he premiered?
This is the first episode he has directed. He will direct one more in season 2.
That's exciting. Well, it seems that this director also was willing to direct an episode where we introduce a whole bunch of characters again. So that's just exciting.
Yeah, as if there weren't enough in the last episode. Now we have, 15 more? That's not even an exaggeration.
The standard that I have for Twin Peaks now is that I need at least 5 new characters every episode. So I really hope that we fill up the tens of thousands of people that do live in Twin Peaks, because that is how the population does work.
So 5,000 is what you're saying.
Yeah, the 50,000, exactly what I said. But yeah, we get a lot of very interesting people. We get Clinton Sternwood, the judge, a.k.a. the wholesome cowboy Viking. We did get Daryl Lodwich? I'm having a hard time pronouncing that one.
Lodwick.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure.
He's the state prosecutor. We get word that MT Wentz is in town, the unseen famous critic. It's presumed, or it seems to be, Mr. Tajimura, this strange-sounding, weird-looking, Japanese man? Japanese?
Mild Yoda vibes. Yeah, this show has problems identifying its Asian characters.
Yeah. I don't know what's gonna go on with him, but definitely interesting.
Yeah.
We get Louie, the enthusiastic front desk lady, Sid, the law clerk, and Mr. Eckerd. Only said a name in this episode, but apparently he's in Hong Kong and just very much wants to see Josie.
My question for you, Professor, is of all these new characters, if you had to pick one that you think is going to be the most important in this series, which one of these characters would you say, you know what, they're probably important? If you had to pick one.
I'd say probably Mr. Tajimura. Weirdly enough. My favorite out of this list is Clinton Sternwood. Again, he's a wholesome cowboy Viking. So,
right.
Mr. Tajimura, at the very least, has this, weird, ominous look on to Ben, in which they both exchange little bows. That kind of makes me curious what's up with Tajimura. Tajimura sounds like a Japanese name. I could be wrong.
Right.
But regardless, it doesn't it doesn't seem like the naming conventions you'd see from Josie or her cousin that comes to visit. Was it Jonathan or Benjamin?
That's what they call him, yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan. So different from the usual naming conventions, it's just flat out Japanese name. And he's just stopping by the double R. So yeah, he's definitely a very strange and mysterious element at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you feel, I guess, having this new set of characters just after we got a whole bunch of new characters in the last episode?
I already told you. I'm just expecting us to just have a fountain of new characters. I hope that we never stop getting a huge amount of characters thrown in the middle. Overall, there's a lot of promise with some of them, and other ones, it just seems that we might just get just fun little side jokes. I hope we get a little bit more on Darrell Lodwich, because in the end, he just really wants just simple burgers, and that's all I really know about him.
Yeah.
Clinton Stern.
You can learn so much from a person's taste in burgers, though.
Oh, absolutely. We know that Clinton Sternwood definitely has a way of carrying himself that is overall entertaining. Louie, I don't know if there's anything beyond enthusiasm with her.
That's her character trait right now.
Just enthusiasm.
It's just enthusiasm. Hey,
Sid,
that's something, though.
Yeah.
That's probably more than Lodwick got, let's be honest. What's more of a characterization, enthusiasm or burger?
Clearly it's clearly it's law clerk, because that's all I got from Sid. And then Mr. Eckerd, the mysterious individual. So yeah, all of these guys I have no qualms with. I want to learn more of, and I think that that's a good way to just kind of bring in your characters. So yeah, no.
They're all better than James for you currently.
Currently, yeah. Currently, they have more positive impact than
starting
James.
at 0 is better than negative. So
exactly.
Okay, cool. So in addition to a bunch of new characters, I would also say that one thing that Todd Holland as a director brought was some really nice atmosphere at moments in this episode, particularly that opening. I don't know about you, Professor, but I really, really enjoy the opening of this episode. The whole ceiling tile zoom out moment. With, I'm going to presume, the voice of Waldo or Laura, right, doing the Daddy Leland. Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's why I was curious. But here's the thing. It sounds like a very childish voice.
It's similar to the voice we heard for Waldo before, which is why I'm saying that. I think it's similar, and we know that Waldo's voice actor is Laura, right? So we talked about that previously on a podcast.
Yeah, but through the eerie intro, we travel through a nearby hole in the wall into Leland's vision of the interrogation area of the police station. And during such, the chanting seems to be just this childish light tone that says daddy, that's pitched low to high, and Leland, high to low. The voice, yeah, it does sound very similar. It does sound much like Laura. So personally, like, at first it seems like it's the same voice. However, I'm personally imagining, like, who might call Leland daddy and who might call him Leland that's more childish. And if his mind is going back in his memory, especially in this sense of shock, I am only thinking that is just like a distant memory or something of him thinking back to a childish Laura and Maddie, like, because likely Maddie would address him as Leland. So it'd be like constantly like pulling him back and forth saying, Daddy Leland, Daddy Leland. That's my thoughts on it, especially since, like, this is a very, like, Laura-centered situation he's in.
So you think it's from the twin toddlers of Twin Peaks?
Yes.
Understandable. No, I think that's a really interesting interpretation. I like that. And then I could be wrong on this, and I apologize if I am, but is this the first time in Twin Peaks we've seen the trees swaying in the wind as, like, a transition?
I can't recall.
So I know that happened in this episode. It was the first time I remember seeing it. If it has happened already, I apologize. I just don't remember it happening until now.
I can't recall. I do know we have seen some forest scenes when it has come to, like, some of the first few episodes, like with the heart buried in the woods. I think that...
Well, even just the Great Northern with the waterfall, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the biggest point of, like, atmosphere for, like, Twin Peaks in general at this point is just the start of a storm, if you will. Like something is clearly coming. It's not landed yet, but something is coming. So that's what I'm interpreting right now. And if something is about to fall, especially considering some of the things building up, I'm excited to see.
Because with the trees in the wind, it's one of those things that when I think of Twin Peaks, it's one of those very vivid images. And it's kind of up there for me with the traffic light that a lot of times uses transition at night. The traffic light, the wind blowing through the trees, the waterfall, the Great Northern, those in my head, whether it's a false memory or it's true, I think of them happening a lot. And when I'm actually sitting down and be like, is this the first time it's been used? And we're already, I don't know, maybe a fifth of the way through season 2. I don't remember the number here. But it's still kind of like, It took a while to get to this one, unless again I missed it. But I really do enjoy those sort of just atmospheric backdrop elements that don't necessarily correlate with a specific scene, but just tie together this kind of feeling and mood of the episode we're in. I know that in the very first episode, your first impression of Twin Peaks, one of the opening things you said during that podcast was that this show has a very visual ASMR kind of vibe for you. I'm curious, now that we're, 11 episodes into this thing. Well, actually,
yes.
I think we're 11 episodes, maybe 12 with the pilot. Do you still feel that visual ASMR vibe? Do you have anything really to add or change to how you felt at the beginning?
As far as it goes, the most standout memories throughout Twin Peaks has been more so the characters and the interesting moments in between, and some of the fun moments with the set. I don't quite recall as many ASMR moments, but I do feel that with the start of every episode, we do get a refreshing take on the overall just area of Twin Peaks with calming music, which is definitely to its benefit. I couldn't think of a better intro to Twin Peaks than literally just kind of gazing around this strange area before being lunged into this murder scenario.
I think what would be really good is if we had an intro, maybe just one episode, a special episode, just have a series of Toad montages with the drumming part from Phil Collins is in the Air Tonight, just kind of looped. The bump, 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 just kind of looping the drums. And then eventually it brings us into the chorus where Toad looks at the camera and winks at us. Twin Peaks, directed by David Lynch. That's the energy I feel it would be helpful. Shake things up,
Sometimes you don't need to shake things up, or else you're just going to get hit in the head with a coconut. So
shaking this can of soda very aggressively and then opening it.
Sure, why not? But yeah, speaking of Toad, we actually get a little few fun moments inside of this episode with him over at the Double R. Whatever is happening with Toad, it seems that he's at the Double R all day and all night, because we see him.
I'm waiting for the spin-off of Toad, because we've got The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer as a book. There's a Secret History Twin Peaks. There's a couple things that have been written for Cooper. Where is Toad's book? Where is the tell-all about Toad?
I'm sure that there's this sort of Frasier or Cheers side story that's probably in someone's screenwriting area that goes into the daily life of Toad just hanging out at the Double R all day. But yeah, no, seriously, he's just chowing down on some burgers before being dragged away by Hank at one point in the evening. But earlier in that day, you do see him at the side just chowing down on some breakfast. He seems to be on a name basis, though. Yeah,
I feel like he eats every meal there. Like, I feel like he eats breakfast, he goes back home, does something at home, goes back for lunch, goes back home, then comes back for dinner, and then goes back home. And then rinse, lather, repeat, day in and day out.
I mean, in the end, we see that Hank does sleep at the Double R. Who's to say that he's not bunk buddies with Toad? It seems that Hank's okay with bringing him back to the kitchen to cook.
Which one is top bunk and which one's bottom bunk, do you think?
No, Toad is absolutely top bunk. He is absolutely top bunk.
Okay.
But no, it doesn't seem like it faces the cook that Toad is back there. Hank is the one who's back there. It's only the point where Norma notices that he's back there that she gets a little upset. So, yeah, who knows about the secret life of Toad?
Very tragic character in this episode.
By the way, so here's the funny thing. Remember that point where I said, like, yeah, you know what? I haven't seen that many rabbits, but RBT, maybe it's rabbits? At the Double R, it seems that they have a special chili that day, and that's rabbit chili.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know if, like, Hank killed all the rabbits in Twin Peaks, and maybe Hank is involved with letter killing, or maybe even Norma. But, for today's stock pot soup, my eyes are now trained onto them in case this Robertson ordeal, is false.
Okay, interesting. Well, did you want to talk more about Toad and the Double R Diner while we're here, or did you want to, well, not about Toad specifically, but the Double R Diner in general, or did you want to jump around back to anything else?
Well, as far as the Double R Diner goes, we are going... There is a interesting critic that's going through town by the name of Wentz. It seems that Wentz is...
MT Wentz.
Yep, MT Wentz. A lustrous critic. Apparently, everyone's freaking out because his review is just basically money in your pocket. This is like someone everyone seems to listen to, but no one really knows who it is. This person just pays in cash, and yeah, it's fun to imagine. But Louis from the Great Northwest Passage?
Great Northern,
thank you.
Northwest Passage was the name of the pilot, so I understand where you're coming from.
Yes, Louis, who works there, gives Norma a call telling her about it, and at that point, Hank hears about this great critic, ends up going into the till, taking out $100 bill, and says he's gonna pick up some flowers, some candles, and some tablecloths, along with a few extra items to add something to the menu to help out. He even mentions Ed to Norma, asking that she tried to call him to revert traffic to the Double R, anyone who's stopping for gas. Really, it seems to be a manipulation tactic to let Norma know that he knows about Ed. But at the same time, for his efforts, honestly, I could be fooled by Hank's intentions. Like, especially since the evil music is missing from his end from season 1. I'm just kind of curious on what Hank's biggest goal here is.
Hey, Hank said that he wanted to make this place like Christmas on 4th of July. Maybe that's his goal. Maybe that is his end goal.
Absolutely. He even does something suspicious later with the state prosecutor. But the thing is that Norma is the one who identifies the state prosecutor and thinks that he is the esteemed critic. It's not Hank bringing up the idea. He's just getting everything ready.
Well,
but
I don't necessarily agree with that, because they exchange looks as though they're in on this assumption together. It's very much like they both seem to be thinking it at the same time. You could argue that maybe Hank's playing into it, but in the moment, he definitely is acting like he also believes that.
But still, nonetheless, it's a strange sense of like nothing's quite confirmed in that sense. But Hank, regardless, goes to pickpocket him, and he takes a moment, and there's this...
I think it's funny that Norma even thought this guy was, because what was the evidence? Like, the diner was like dead. There was no one else in there. This guy shows up, and I think the best case you could make that he's the guy is he has a briefcase, and he has a nice hat.
No one brings a briefcase to a burger place. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, like, he could have come back from like a business trip or something. He could just be carrying his briefcase with him. Maybe he wants to look over some of his files at the table while he's eating. He might be a busy man. Turns out he actually is, because he's the DA, but, you know.
Look, like, when it comes to, like, someone bringing in a briefcase, you gotta say that between briefcase people and non-briefcase people, likely the briefcase people might have something more to say about your restaurant.
See, and then there's the conspiracy theorist part of me that I think is in a lot of Twin Peaks fans, who wants to over crazy analyze the fact that the guy's name is Daryl Lodwick. The initials for that are DL. Who else has initials DL? David Lynch. Does that mean something? No, probably not.
Probably not.
I feel like that's the kind of assumptions that are a lot of Twin Peaks fans want to just jump to. I just am like, do I do something with that? Probably not. Probably not at this time, at least.
My crazy is rubbing off of you, but oh
no, trust me, there's a lot of crazy in the Twin Peaks community before you, Professor. You're just adding your unique flavor to it, and we all appreciate that.
Yay. But yeah, no, he even kind of lingers on like looking at the wallet, either as confirmation for himself or a sense of discovery. Don't know yet. Curious on what he's going to do with this information, or what he's even going to be doing with the ID with that. We know that later.
And given Hank's criminal history, he might have already known he was the DA, which would play into the idea that, yeah, Norma thought he might have been MT Wentz. Hank played along with it, and then wanted really to make sure his confirmation was correct that this was the DA. Because again, Hank might know who the DA is.
But yeah, as far as the state attorney is concerned, later on with the conversation between the judge and Leland, there's just he's like not there when he's supposed to, so I'm hoping that overall he's okay. He just checked into his hotel and nothing happened between him and Hank.
Yeah, well, the only person that's probably not okay is Hank himself, because we don't know how much later into the night, but obviously it was late enough for Hank to go get, some late night milk from the fridge and not try to wake his bunk bed partner, Toad. Over at the diner, we get the mysterious Asian man who previously had been appearing in episodes just destroy Hank. Like, just obliterated Hank. It was a jobber match. That was sad to see for my boy Hank.
It was adorable. I enjoyed the fact that he was trying to go a little bit Texas Ranger in his pajamas, but it just wasn't working out. So...
Which is so, it's so weird to mention. We've talked about Hank quite a lot in season 1, and the music that would accompany him, like you said, just generally the menace and unknown with his character. And this episode, it's like, okay, he could be plotting something, but like, it's hard to tell. And like, he got destroyed in one fight. So it's like, is he being depowered right now?
This season in general has kind of been poor to Hank, just because not only are the horns really pushing on him to be the muscle and just flex when they say to flex, and he's trying to juggle that around. Not only with this whole entire Josie and Jonathan thing is he now getting beaten down when he has some suspicion cast on him. And Josie does straight up confide with good old Jonathan that, hey, seems Hank's causing a little bit of trouble, and he says he's going to take care of him. Oh, God, he did definitely take care of him.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't kill him. He said next time it would be his head, but he did everything but kill him.
Yeah, last season I was really hoping like Hank was going to be the person setting up the dominoes and we'd see them crash. Currently, just Hank is crashing. Almost getting to the point where I'm concerned for him, but maybe that's part of his ploy.
Maybe he's making you feel sympathy for him when he shouldn't. I don't know. I do know, but it's sad because like the thing is, not every character who is imposing needs to be a good fighter. We don't have any indication so far, at least, that Benjamin Horn can fight. If Benjamin Horn got in a fight, depending on who it is, he'd probably lose. He's not seeming to be a fighter. His imposition, his strength is in manipulation, is in money and knowing how to move the money and kind of being in the background. And you have some people who are menacing that they'll kind of just be treacherous, and we'll talk about Jean Reno here in a moment, but Jean Reno, we know that he can be lethal, but not necessarily in like a fist fight. It's more that he is someone who might unexpectedly turn, right? He is someone who might fire a gun at you. But Hank is someone who up to this point is meant to be a brawler. He's the strong man. He's the guy who can beat people. He's almost like the yin yang. He's the opposite of Ed, right? He's like Ed with like an element of that cunning that maybe Ed doesn't seem to have. But so for Hank to lose in a fight like this, to me, has the potential of hurting his strength. Whereas if, like Benjamin Horn, let's say, had been assaulted, I don't think that would hurt Benjamin too much because he's not known as a fighter. Hank is. Flip side, though, it does give more power to the new character that assaulted him. So...
It seems like there's this weird tier list that's going on for strength. It kind of makes me wish that we had some sort of subjective bias we could put together with something like a Twin Peaks fighting game to see who truly is the greatest of all strengths within Twin Peaks. My money!
I would love to talk about that in the Season 2 retrospective when we get to it. I'm down for that.
Regardless, just as a little bit of preview to that, my money's on the log lady, mainly for log reasons.
Okay. Well, you count the log as a separate character, though, so you can't. I mean, those are tag team. They're a tag team. Okay, fine.
It's a tag team.
So for this episode, though, at least, most powerful character seems to be mysterious Asian man who we'd been seeing but haven't really had much to talk about because he hasn't done anything until now. So we are told that he is Josie's cousin, Jonathan. So Josie shows up finally after being gone since the beginning of season 2. She has these shopping bags with her, a decent amount. I don't know if it's enough for how long she's been gone, but she's got shopping bags with her. She talks to Pete and tells Pete that, like, she's glad that Catherine was there to help them through these difficult circumstances. And then Pete's like, well, Catherine, she's dead. We haven't found the body. I'm not sure what they're going to bury. But he's talking about how, Catherine hasn't been around. Which, Josie kind of shows that sympathy toward, that comforting toward. And then we get Josie with Truman. And previously, Cooper had told Truman, try to watch so your feelings don't override your reasoning here and your duty as an officer. And yet at the same time, when Truman said easier said than done, Cooper understood. We get to see that confliction with Truman again, where he's questioning Josie, but you can tell he's holding back and he's second guessing in a way that he probably wouldn't with other people in the town.
Yes. As far as it goes, Josie absolutely has I don't know whether or not she actually gets a thrill out of it or if she has a sense of regret just because with the later conversation with Jonathan, as well as just being in the moment. But she is just clearly manipulating Truman when he's just like having questions, like saying like, look, these are suspicious circumstances. She either runs away from the confrontation off to the side over suspicion or just keeps distracting him with these move-ons, senses of tension. And despite the fact that, Catherine's dead, the mill has been burnt down, and the question was on insurance money, especially after she went shopping, she ends up, again, making moves on Truman and asking him to rip up the very expensive clothes that she ended up recently buying. So, to say the least, I don't think that she's as subtle as some characters.
I think it's, when it comes to it's interesting to see between different writers and kind of the way the show's trajectory goes. It's really obvious to viewers what's going on. And I would think Truman hasn't been portrayed as the most intuitive, but he's also not been portrayed as someone who is blind to what's going on. So for Truman, I almost kind of want to think it's willful ignorance. Because when he's talking to Josie and he starts asking her these hard questions and being like, well, there was insurance money at stake. And she's just like, how could you? How could you think of such terrible things? How could you hurt me so? He just jumps right into the trap, right? Like he immediately, says, I'm sorry, and apologizes to her and basically like stops that line of questioning. So we can take the idea that either A, the writers of the episode mean that to be cunning and it maybe just doesn't come across that way. It's really obvious. And that's kind of a failure maybe on the writing part. B, Truman isn't very perceptive. Or C, Truman is perceptive, it isn't very cunning, and he's still going along with it. And I think the most interesting of those options is C.
I think I'll go probably with D. I think that as far as... I say no to your options. We're both such contrarians, Professor. I think that from what...
Go on.
I think from what I've seen the writers and how they've handled Truman, he's very trustworthy with the people he's close to. But I think trustworthiness can be brought to a fault. And I think Josie may be playing up that aspect. Like, there's this closeness and relationship that they both have, and she relies on that sense of trust heavily. So when that trust comes into question, she shows anguish when it comes to that and making him question his sense of trust, which only makes him trying to build up that foundation again to be like, okay, you know what? Maybe I was wrong. I gotta apologize for this. I gotta set the record straight. So I think that Josie is making some very good moves on the right person. This might not be as effective on someone as Cooper, or many other individuals in Twin Peaks, but it's just more so playing off on that trusting side of Truman.
Okay. Fair enough. I think that's an interesting angle. So while Josie and Truman are playing Pokemon on the couch, the lightning flashes ominously, and who is looking in on them as they catch the Pokemon? None other than Jonathan. That's definitely his real name. Anyway, absolutely his real name. And we get a moment later on.
I just realized it's Jonathan and Josie. Is it just like most of their like incognito names just have to start with a J?
I'm waiting for the third Japanese or Chinese character who is named Jebediah to just show up.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No J's can be trusted.
And again, I made a comment earlier about how this show has issues with Asian characters. I'll get to that more when I can't really say fully what I mean, but there's a sense in which I don't think it's clear all the time what nationality they're going for. And maybe I'm missing something, but I think they're kind of conflating Japan and China at certain points. And it is what it is. So when I say that there's issues with it, I mean it in that sense, where I think that there's some clarity would be nice.
Maybe the note inside of Laura Palmer's diary was just trying to meet one of the random J's of this association.
Nervous about meeting Japan tonight.
No, they're from Hong Kong. That's China.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. The show's making mistakes. So we get Josie talking with Jonathan. I wrote in my notes an error. I'm just going to read this because I think it's funny. I put Josie introduces him to Hank as her cousin Jonathan. I think that's Pete. I think Hank got introduced to Jonathan a different way. So Josie introduced, maybe it was Truman. Either way, it wasn't Hank. And when they're in private talking, Pete's getting them coffee. Jonathan says he doesn't know how she's made it here 6 years. He kind of derides the whole country bumpkin lifestyle that he sees around him. And he says that they've all, she says, we've all got our jobs to do, kind of brushing off that concern. And Jonathan says that hers is nearly finished. They're expected back in Hong Kong. You mentioned Mr. Eckerd wanting to see her. That's all we really know about that.
Yep.
He says he'll deal with Hank.
Yep, she says she can get the job done in about 2 days.
Yeah. So we'll see what comes of that in 2 days, which in Twin Peaks time could be one episode or all of season 2. So we don't know how time works here.
That's absolutely exciting. I also want to note that it's also fun that Josie is just kind of carrying around this mongoose and snake little thing that they have in which they're both fighting one another. No clue why Pete was carrying around or trying to move it while Jonathan was around, but he hands it off to Jonathan. Jonathan hands it off to Josie. Probably is some sort of representation of turmoil and natural enemies, but regardless, it's still just a fun set piece.
Because Pete's a hunter.
Just what it is. He is a hunter.
Pete is like a hunter and nature enthusiast. I'm kind of tempted to believe he's the one who's killing the rabbits for the diner. We know he likes fishing. I don't think it's a stretch to believe that, if he's not fishing, he's out there hunting rabbits.
Hey, man, if there's a fish in the percolator, there's likely a rabbit in the soup, so.
Speaking of rabbits in the soup, proverbially speaking, who is putting a rabbit in the soup of Twin Peaks? Leland right now. And by putting a rabbit, I mean confessing to killing Jacques Renault. So he's in police custody.
What?
He's in police custody.
What?
And he admits to having killed Jacques Renault out of the belief that he was the killer because the police had arrested him. Do you buy that reasoning? What do you think of that, Professor? That he sees him get arrested, gotta be the killer. Has to be.
The thing is that he's definitely unstable, and what sort of motives he has, I don't know where his mental faculties are at. When they ask if he knew his name. He starts saying no, but about a second and a half later, he goes, yes, it was Jacques Renaud.
Well, now he does.
He does now.
He didn't know before.
Yeah. But regardless, this man was arrested and he ended up killing him. And he mentions about how this is not grief. This is something that deep down, like he's staring unblinkingly. He has tears in his eyes looking at Truman. He says everything deep down where every cell screams and you can hear nothing else. That's the difference between grief and true loss.
And I actually think Cooper was being very callous in this situation, because when Leland starts talking about that emotion he's feeling, Cooper responds, that, none of them are strangers to grief. Can you imagine being this guy who's investigating the murder? He comes from outside the town, right? He's been there for a while now, maybe 2 weeks, but he's still an outsider. And he's talking to the man whose daughter died. Cooper, who does not have a child, has never experienced the loss of a child as far as we know, right? For him to just kind of remark, all of us have experienced grief in some way. Wow, that's really sensitive. That's really, I really think that's callous.
It may be callous, but at the same time, at the scene that happens right afterwards with Doc Hayward, he's pitying him. He says that no parent should ever bury a child. Cooper turns around and just very sternly, irritating, asks if he approves of murder. I think that there is this sensation, maybe it's on the levels of like how Rosenfeld feels about how much he does love life and he does try to go for the sense of peace. But it seems that when it comes to the options of murder or the ideas of like murder or death, it's something that Cooper strongly stands against. So I think that callousness is coming from somewhere. Whether or not we will see anything soon come from it, or out of all the books that we'll be going through, if we'll see something from it, I think that it's very telling of Cooper. That is where his line is drawn, especially when it comes to like talking about Twin Peaks. When the judge and him are talking, what was the line that was said? Like when he's saying that, "What do you think of Twin Peaks? It's like heaven." And the judge says, "What was it?"
He says, "This week, heaven includes arson, multiple homicides, and an attempt on the life of a federal agent."
Yep.
To which Cooper replies, "Heaven is a large and interesting place, sir."
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I don't think it necessarily, when I say that it's callous of Cooper, I am casting judgment in a certain sense, because I think that it's interesting to think of the characters in a critical fashion, in the sense of what do characters say and do that we may or may not personally agree with. And I think an interesting aspect of Cooper's character that is revealed, especially in this episode, but not the first time, is that there is a sense of coldness in him. We don't usually see it. We usually see a very compassionate side of him, but he has been cold before. When we go back to the pilot, because eventually you and I are going to rewatch the international pilot, I think.
Yes.
And whenever we do that, you'll notice how different Cooper is in that pilot. He's very much like, where's the dead girl? Immediately starts extracting things from her fingers, just looks excited about everything, even when it's like about a dead person. He just doesn't seem to have a lot of sympathy. I mentioned it before with, I don't know if maybe I didn't mention it, but recently we had some involvement with Ronette, and he just starts immediately questioning her as soon as she's waking up, showing pictures of the guy who might have assaulted her. Yeah. Like, there's this sense in which his eagerness to pursue justice can also be very harsh. And you could agree or disagree with that harshness. Maybe it's necessary. Maybe him saying that to Leland is furthering the idea that we've all experienced grief, but that's no excuse to do what you did. Or maybe he said that expecting that to get more emotion out of Leland. He's trying to provoke him. Again, we saw the way he talked to Bobby in the first episode in the pilot. He was questioning Bobby. He was very different than usual. So it could be that Cooper, when he said they've all experienced grief, it's provoking. Maybe that's what's going on.
Yes,
I just think it's, like you said, interesting for Cooper's character. We do get Judge Clinton Sternwood, the county judge who's coming in here.
Yes, I love him. He is fantastic.
He's a fun character.
He is wholesome. He is just enjoyable to hear just sort of talk in general.
Truman says right away that he and Cooper have a lot in common. They'll have a fun time, and it seems like so far that's been true.
Yeah, the biggest line that in this episode, in my opinion, was when he was addressing Leland, and like he's saying, like, yes, we're gonna have to go through the usual fashions on trying to uphold the law, but know that when we cast aside the shadows, but likely talking about their lives,
when these frail shadows we inhabit now have quit the stage, we'll meet and raise a glass again together in Valhalla.
Yes,
Thunder!
I love that. I just love that.
It's a great line. No, it's great. I agree with you. It's probably the best line in the episode.
So it seems that at the very least we'll be getting a little bit of Norse influence from his end, and we'll get a little Tibetan influence from Cooper's end. I wonder if they'll ever clash. But no, and the most telling line afterwards, when they're just all like Truman, Sternwood, as well as Cooper are sitting inside of a room together, he just says that, I think I speak for us all. We all have hard jobs. Just kind of like having to even deal with the concept of Leland, who seems like a genuinely loving person, taking such a large, drastic, and horrifying action as like killing Jacques in his sleep.
One other thing associated with Leland that we had in this episode is that after I think it was after they were interrogating him, we found out later that the county said there was no family named Robertsons that ever lived next to the Palmers.
Yep.
So we know that Leland had said there was some Robertson situation, but they said the last occupants were Kalispell, which to me sounds like my name, Kalil. So I'm thinking that somehow it associates with me. But he says they're going to go check on the Kalispell family.
Yeah.
So we don't really know what's going on with the Robertsons, because if there's been no people named Robertson that live next to him, what's going on? Maybe Cooper should have asked more questions to that guy. I don't know. Because I kind of derided Cooper's investigation abilities, because when he found out about the Robertson thing, he just immediately left. He didn't even really stay to question more and find out more about it. And Leland's there, so obviously he can get more information out of it. But so far we haven't heard anything. We're still kind of waiting to find out.
Yeah. Interested in seeing that. Nothing will be as it seems, as we've very much especially seen with Mr. Gerard. So yeah, it's definitely promising, to say the least. Speaking of not expecting things and saying the least, let's go ahead and talk about Jean Renault. I tried doing what you usually do, and though I fail, I at the same time succeed.
I think I fail harder than you, which means I succeed better.
Whatever.
It's not a sliding scale of like when you add more, you detract on the other side. Both increase at the same time. You know?
Whatever you say to keep yourself sleeping. Regardless, Jean definitely is an intriguing figure in this episode. We end up getting...
Yeah.
We get the scene where Jean Renault is inside of Ben's office, unexpectedly. He says that he sells insurance to places like One-Eyed Jack's, which might be a concealed comment.
They've met before. He knows Jean Renault.
Yeah.
So it is legitimate that that's what's going on. Because I at first was unclear about that, but then, I rewound the scene. And as he says, I sell insurance to places like One-Eyed Jack's, Ben looks at him. Jean Renault. So it does seem that, Ben and him have met before, but they're not very close.
No.
He doesn't recognize him right away.
It's not guaranteed that they've met. It's just more so he recognized Jean Renault. Like, it just might be a sense like Jean Renault might be the person that speaks about whether or not this insurance thing is completely understood. Like, he name drops One-Eyed Jack's, and whether or not insurance is his true gig, it's still enough to get a reaction out of Ben. So... Jean...
I think it's a loose meaning of insurance.
Regardless...
It's a criminal kind of insurance, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So it might just be more so Ben has heard of Jean...
He takes care of emergencies.
Yes.
He takes care of incidents.
Yes.
of many natures.
Yes, he's heard of Jean.
He makes the problems disappear.
Yeah. He's heard of John on indefinitely. He may have met him. That's not quite confirmed. But regardless, they have a nice little one-on-one, and he ends up sending the message to Ben about Audrey in video format, and just claims to just be a messenger. He tells Ben that One-Eye Jax is being run by pickpockets and fools, and claims that Ben needs a partner who can take care of these little problems. He also asks that Cooper brings $125,000 to Jean over in ransom. And yeah, that overall, there's more to say about Jean, but do you want to elaborate more on this scene of just like this little back and forth between him and John?
Yeah. I don't know if it's so much as elaborate, but just kind of make a comment that I feel like I've been spoiled in these past few episodes, because I've told you each time it's happened, I really enjoy seeing scenes where Ben is involved in a power play with another powerful character.
Yes.
We've seen this already with Hank recently. We've seen this with Cooper recently. And whereas we can make a case that at least in those situations, he's either holding his own or winning, this is one where he is kind of being like, Jean's putting his heel on him. And I feel like just how we saw Jonathan, pummel Hank, this almost feels similar here, where another character that's pretty new to season 2, Jean, is also crushing Ben a bit here. Ben loses a lot of the power here.
He's verbally pummeling Ben.
Verbally, not physically, but still very deteriorating to the ego, especially for Ben, even commenting, this was supposed to be an equitable exchange. Ben realizes that he is not getting the fair end of the deal, but Jean has the ultimate leverage here,
Yep.
Say what we will about Ben, his number one concern is his daughter right now. So at least it seems that way, right? I don't think he has, maybe there's some ulterior motive to saving his daughter, but I don't think saving his daughter saves him money. I think he just legitimately cares about his daughter.
I like to think he cares about his daughter, but there might also be put into question on someone having something over Ben that he just genuinely dislikes. In a greater sense. I think that we've mainly just seen the chess player Ben for the most part. So I don't know his overall motives at the moment. So I'm curious if Audrey makes it out of this.
I want to know how Sylvia Horn is feeling about all this. I want to know how the mom's feeling.
We'll never see her again.
Seen her.
We'll never see her again.
Wouldn't it be nice to know how the mom is reacting, or even to that extent,
she has no mom, she has no brother, she has none of these. It's just Ben and Audrey against the world.
Even Jerry. Like, they're the only person in the Horn family we've seen react to Audrey being gone. And this is, okay, I'm going to leverage a little bit of criticism right now. And maybe there's a side to it that I'm not thinking about, right? Again, I'm not to say what's going to happen later, but I'm saying up to this point, Audrey's been gone to the knowledge of Ben for at least a few days. I guess I don't know how time works again. Yeah. But the only people we've seen really react to Audrey being gone are Ben and Cooper. Yep. Cooper more emotionally, Ben concerned but not really breaking down. We haven't seen the walls of Ben's personality come crumbling or anything like that. We've just got the sense that he's, focusing on getting his daughter back. But we haven't seen anyone else's reaction. Not her friends from school, not enemies from school for that matter. We don't hear anything from any other Horn member or anyone at the police department. Mm-hmm. It's almost like just no one really cares. And I guess you could argue maybe do the police know that Audrey's not around? She's been kidnapped? I don't even know if they know. I know they don't know about the operation that's going to happen. We'll get to it in a moment. I know they don't know of why Cooper needed a bookhouse boy, but I don't even know if they know Audrey's missing. The way the show's been portraying it, it's like it's a secret between Ben and Cooper and no one else knows. I feel like Sylvia Horn is at home, hasn't even noticed her daughter's not there.
I don't think that Ben has reported it, nor has, or he may have even convinced his wife to not call the police over this. It could be that Audrey has had a history of this case, like with this dialogue with Cooper. There may have been instances where she would disappear days on end, and she would just pop back up. Yeah, she's got
the Princess Peach syndrome.
Yeah. So it's
possible. It's possible.
So it's questionable whether or not this actually is a common occurrence, but regardless,
I would argue that hasn't been established very well.
Not very well.
If that's the case that she disappears often, that's something I think could get a comment or just something to imply that. Because right now it just feels like everyone's oddly calm about it, which seems weird. Again, just a little bit of criticism may or may not be what you agree with, Professor.
Nope.
But you don't agree?
No, I don't.
Okay. Is there anything more you wanted to say about not agreeing, or?
Just more so that Audrey has been rebellious for quite some time. She has done things that have blatantly either caused issue to Ben or to the overall lodge in general. That if she just disappears for a little bit, I'm sure that Ben will just correlate, okay, between this spilling coffee, ruining things with the Norwegians, just kind of going off and aloof with this or that. Yeah, Audrey's just trying to get more attention this way. Like, I think that he's just connecting all these sorts of loose threads and just assuming that either Audrey wants attention or Audrey's doing something that Audrey will do. Maybe he's even connecting his past life, like when he was a young child and how he reminisces with Jerry over just a past life. Maybe he just assumes that Audrey lives very much like Ben would. So I think that Ben's concern just comes from a combination between experiences with Audrey as well as just an assumption of what he might do himself. So he's just believing in that youthful rebellion.
So you don't think there should be anyone else showing concern over Audrey's disappearance?
I mean, I think that...
Considering that, again, like 2 weeks ago, Laura Palmer died.
I mean, so far, I think we should get more screen time with Horns, but we haven't seen anything with the Horns. The only person that really does show a little bit of concern is Cooper, who does come up to address Ben. And maybe Ben just speaks the same way to Cooper as he does the rest of his family until they are either convinced or so quiet and angry amongst their complacency. So
yeah, again, they focus so much on the idea of a curfew, that people were not supposed to go out at night, that the town was grieving over Laura Palmer. Then they had the funeral, and as Donna said, they're still not able to bury Laura Palmer deep enough. But I would think, 2-3 weeks? Again, we mentioned that all of season 1 was like a week, right? So season 2 can't be that much farther down the timeline. If it's been less than 2 weeks since a girl in the same school, the same age as Audrey, died, I think no one's concerned that Audrey hasn't been around for a few days.
I think that not only
that to me seems hard to believe.
I think that not only is this curfew just verbal, just because we see teenagers constantly out in like the late of night, but yeah, I would be concerned as a parent. I just don't think that Ben is concerned trying to consider things about Audrey, especially with all his plans that may be clouding his vision and just kind of keeping his eyes away from that situation entirely. So yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, I guess we'll agree to disagree. Yeah. I feel like even if it was just her classmates should notice she's gone. I guess you can make the case that like Donna, Maddie, James, Bobby, they're all so caught up in their own inner turmoils right now, their own investigations, if you will, their own situations, they don't even notice. That's the best I can really think about. Donna, if she's taking up... Wait, hold on a second. If Donna's taking up the Meals on Wheels for Laura... I guess she didn't... Okay, that's different. I was thinking of tutoring Johnny. That's a separate thing from Meals on Wheels. So yeah, Donna wouldn't be seeing the Horns. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so as far as it goes...
I'm good to move on.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as it goes, I just don't think that there's just going to be the 5 seconds of like being like, where's Audrey? Yeah, Audrey. Okay, Ben. Like, I just assume that they just don't feel like they may need the scene. But again, agree to disagree. Anyway.
Sure. So I guess the last things we have with Audrey, then, we get some more stuff with her.
No, I'm talking
at One-Eye Jacks.
Yeah, as far as, like, continuing on the Jean Renault train that I was on, later we do later on we do find Audrey being dragged into the office of Jean Renault after she didn't seem to be compliant in taking her quote-unquote medicine, and she ends up saying that Battis hit her. Whether or not she is telling the truth or not, it doesn't really matter. Like, John,
I'm gonna believe Audrey. Who do I trust more? Audrey Horn in a very vulnerable state where she is being like attacked and abused, or Emery Battis, the least trustworthy person in this town, potentially. The most slithery of people.
Regardless, it doesn't matter, because Jean Renault walks up, sits down and right up next to her and says, like, I'm as long as you're around me, this is not acceptable. This is not going to happen again. And Battis ends up sort of blathering and just kind of says, look, listen, Audrey, when you have to deal with reasonable people, you have to show to be reasonable. And he says reasonable about 6 other times. And the way that it's shot and the way that she gasps, it looks like, and talks about like having to deal with her happened beforehand. But John, at this note, ends up shooting Battis straight into the chest. Goodbye, Battis. Glad I got to learn about your kinks before you left. But in the end, he shoots Battis.
And Jean Renault didn't even bat an eye.
But he ends up embracing Audrey as Audrey is in tears and shaking.
Yeah. I think it's a very effective scene.
Like, it is a very effective scene. The biggest thing about it is that Jean Renault, like, compared to any other character we've seen people being two-faced and so on. Jean Renault is about 12-face. He can just slip into a scene, and the only thing that I can be confident to confirm is that Jean Renault is on his own side. I do not know where he confidently stands at One-Eyed Jacks. I do not know how confidently he stands as being a partner to Ben. I do not know how confidently he stands just trying to convince Audrey that he's on her side and what he gains from that. All I know is that if there was a chess game going on between anyone in Twin Peaks, there's white pieces and black pieces. Jean Renault would come in with brown pieces and start putting them on the board himself, and it would just play like a regular game somehow.
Okay. I don't know how I feel about that metaphor you just threw out there, that analogy, but yeah, no, I think it's important with how many different antagonistic forces there have been in this series so far. We've met so many bad people that Jean Renault has to differentiate himself somehow, and the way they've differentiated him by being, as you said, 12-faced, I think is pretty good. Yeah. He is different than the other antagonists we've had.
Yes, absolutely.
That's saying something, considering we've had so many.
Yeah, and in the end, he's doing very similar things to the other, but there's still a distinct way Jean Renault carries himself that... He's
also not like the other Renaults.
No, he's not.
Which, again, there's been so many. Saying something.
Yeah, oh boy, I don't even know where he's going to take any sort of angles coming up with Cooper. Like, I like to think that it's going to be indefinitely revenge for his brother, but at the same time, I'm wondering how he's going to play that up.
The Jean Renault train is speeding along the tracks to Audrey tied up on the tracks, and there is this debonair hero trying to untie her by the name of Dale Cooper. But will he untie her before the train hits them both? Also, I was going to make a joke earlier, and you were too eloquent and quick in your analysis. I was going to make a comment that if he's a French-Canadian train, instead of going choo-choo, it goes "Bonjour." But, you know.
Why? Just why?
Okay.
Why is it so important
French is really
that he is French-Canadian to you?
I was a period I wanted to learn French, and I tried to like listen to like this teaching you French like audio CD, and it like played music, and it was cute. It was really cute, but I can't understand French listening to it. It just kind of starts to sound the same to me, and I'm sure if I did other languages it'd be the same, but in my head at least, I don't know French beyond just varying forms of you know? So when I thought of choo-choo, I was like, as the train. That explains it logically, doesn't it? No disrespect against the French.
No, because I have no clue why Jean Renault is the center of these jokes.
Because he's French-Canadian. He's. I either got to pick the France part or the Canadian part. Last time I commented on the Canadian part, now we're left with the France part.
Anyway, Cooper has a date with Jean Renault.
Yeah, and he's going to bring a chaperone to his date. He asked Truman for one of the Bookhouse Boys, one of his best, but it's better they don't know why they're being summoned. And Truman, being the bro that he is, and also not caring about the fine letters of the law, decides to do this. And not only does he send one of his best men, he sends himself.
He gives utmost trust to Cooper when, tested, Cooper is just nervous, clearly nervous. And Truman sees this. He says, okay, you want the best? You want to make sure that these details are just off to the side? That's fine. You got it. And later on, Truman does approach Cooper with a very beautiful and elaborate triangle of peanuts, mind you, on the bar, and says that, the best is here. And Cooper ends up just smiling. There is this genuine sense of companionship that I adore. And there's just this point in which, like, there are high stakes going on. This is important. This is a big job for Cooper. But regardless, Cooper sees this, smiles, and says, you know what, Truman, let me buy you a beer. This is basically him implementing the coffee scenario again, but this time with a beer, being like, I'm going to treat you. You got to treat yourself at times. Doesn't matter when. It's got to be a surprise. And with this genuine sense of joy, they enjoy a little bit of beer before they go off on their mission. So, they're a great duo. And genuinely, I do adore and hope to see more of them in the future, depending on whether or not the John Renault thing goes well.
Speaking of treating yourself, Andy treated himself to a fertility test for Doc Hayward. He's been wearing boxer shorts every day, as prescribed.
Yep.
He takes the Flesh World magazine, which again, by this point, has been associated with like murder and terrible things. He just takes that, he's going to go, he solid snakes his way right into Lucy. Comedy ensues, right? The sperm sample ends up sliding under the chair later.
Yeah, the log lady message definitely implements itself in this moment, in which, like, sometimes miscommunication can lead to anger.
Yes. And obviously the most important scene in this whole entire episode obviously has to be the sperm sliding underneath the chair. He had to bend over to get it. It's funny because you see his butt, and then Cooper notices the boots.
Which, by the way,
yes,
yeah, and the boots, it's Mr. Gerard sells boots, and it's discovered that there's that connection with Circle Brand,
which we kind of already figured.
Yeah, we figured, but overall, it's nice for the confirmation. But better detail, he ends up walking past, and Officer Bob bumps into him and causes him to have this instance. Like, I'm looking at this, I'm like, how many Bobs are just generally in Twin Peaks? I've only met one Bob in my whole life, and there's already 3 that are inside of this town. So, this is definitely...
Hey, in a town of 5 million, as you seem to think it is,
50,000.
There can be a lot of Bobs.
There can be
5,000.
But no,
I was kind of disappointed in my man Cooper here in this episode because it's so obvious the problems that Andy and Lucy are having. But then Cooper, asks like, Harry, what's with Lucy? Like, come on, Cooper. Come on. You know what's happening with Lucy. You should.
I mean, Cooper does come up and tries to address the overall issue. Like, Lucy is just clearly distraught, and she's just unable to speak to Andy. And Cooper just comes up and says, look, you gotta vent this out. And in the end, like, she's just trying to say that, like, she doesn't know what she necessarily wants. And even Cooper is just kind of confused and distraught at this moment, being like, okay. Truman even comes in saying this is usual. I wasn't sure how to
read the conversation that he has with Truman after Lucy leaves, because I could read it as, like, because, like, he mentions how Truman seems to have had experience in this area before. That could be with, like, rocky relationships, or are they specifically having one of those moments where it's like, yeah, women are weird, aren't they? Because we've already had that earlier, where it was during, like, the shooting range or whatever, I think, where they were talking about how women are, like, a different breed or something. There's kind of this weird, like, bro, man, women are just tricky. You can't understand them, which feels a bit dated.
Yeah.
And I can't really tell whether that's what's going on with Truman and Cooper, that, like, Lucy, they're shaking their head like, man, women are strange. Or are they just saying, hey, I've been in rocky relationships? If it's the former, come on. If it's the latter, okay, understandable. And I couldn't quite read what the thing was going on. I got kind of vibes of both there.
In the end, the biggest thing to read is that Lucy is distraught and doesn't know what to do and doesn't know how to deal with her emotions, and those outside don't quite know how to handle things either. This is just generally complicated.
It's obviously the most complicated situation in the entire town.
Yeah. Dick even arrives later and tries to confide in Lucy, offering her $650, which apparently has like run him dry. Like he desperately tried to put together all 650 of these dollars to try to help with the little problem where she has been calling around. Not so subtly alluding to potentially aborting this child. And Lucy responds saying that, you know what? You're going to take your money, you're going to go through the door, you're going to go through the second door, it sticks a little, go into your car, turn your key, and just leave and never talk to me again.
What a power move.
Yeah.
I'm glad Lucy did that, you know? As much as I jokingly, and I will immediately in another timeline, I will support Richard Tremaine, partly for the meme. But in all honesty, though, I mean, this is Lucy asserting some confidence that I think we've been wanting to see from her for a while.
Yes. She is putting her...
And some ownership.
Yep, she puts her foot down and just makes it clear to Tremaine that, no, this is not good, this is not acceptable. I'm just concerned
I think it's also... Oh, go on.
I'm just generally concerned for Lucy because... I have no clue how this is going to end for her, how she's going to find her answers. I only hope the best because this is a lot.
Well, considering how fast Twin Peaks is moving, a pregnancy could last a while, right? Will this show make 9 months? Will 9 months pass in Twin Peaks? We'll have to see. So it may not be a problem for right now, at least.
Oh, no.
But one line you seem to have brushed over, though, that we have to, of course, draw attention to is Cooper when he's talking to Lucy. Are you still seeing this, Dick? It's such a classic line delivery. I gotta say, if the Valhalla comment wasn't the best line in the episode, I think it's this one. It's a low hanging fruit, but at the same time, you gotta pick the fruit. Hello? Professor? Hello?
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I thought the internet went out.
Nope. Just my disappointment went on, and I went out.
Why?
The low-hanging fruit hangs too low when it comes to Dick. Between this, as well as Lucy crying inside of the overall just side room, screaming Dick as Andy stops by. I'm not against lowbrow humor, but come on.
It's a lowbrow situation. And Dick Tremaine is a lowbrow kind of guy. So even though he thinks he's highbrow, he's very convinced he's highbrow.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say earlier, and I blanked on it, was I think it's interesting how this episode, coming out in the 90s, it doesn't really make a statement on abortion. Like, at least this episode hasn't. We'll see if it does later. But it's not a conversation about whether she should or shouldn't have an abortion. It just settles on the idea that she's upset because it's not something she'd wanted. It's not something she had planned over. It's Dick Tremaine telling her basically what to do. It's depowering her.
Yeah, it is no conversation. It is just him saying, like, okay, you know what? I asked around, I talked around, here's some money for you to do the thing. Like, Lucy is the one who is this is a discussion you sit down upon. But clearly you didn't at the Double R. Clearly you just called said preggers, smoked your cig, probably asked for the check and said good day. But yeah, not so nice light on Tremaine right now.
Is Andy doing any better right now?
Again, he's trying to communicate. He's trying to understand the concept of whether or not, like, his sperm can be active. Andy is making the effort. So that I can respect to a point. It doesn't, it doesn't wipe away clean and make the things that happened before not happen. But I can appreciate the effort of him trying to grow as a person.
Do you overall like this storyline, the love triangle, if you can even call it a love triangle. But do you like the Lucy, Andy, Dick Tremaine storyline so far?
So far, when it comes towards large amounts of stress, especially in this soap opera aesthetic, it's definitely enticing. I do look.
It's very soap opera.
It is very soap opera. I do look forward to seeing more of the scenes and more of it unravel, despite my disdain for Tremaine. So no, no matter how many poor things I say about Andy, Lucy, or Tremaine, nonetheless, Twin Peaks has been able to deliver nicely to me. So feeling good about that. Well, I
can't always tell because I know you genuinely dislike James and Donna. So yeah. I wasn't sure how you're feeling on, the other love triangle. Hey, if you think about it, love triangles, they're like mountains or pyramids. What do they have? They have points, otherwise known as peaks. There are 2 love triangles currently. Could they be the Twin Peaks? Is the secret these 2 love triangle storylines? Stay tuned. Speaking of love triangles.
Okay, no, you're not going to get away with that. No, there's way more than 2 love triangles. What we're dealing with Ed, Norma, and Nadine.
Okay, there are a lot more, yeah.
Hank, Norma, and Ed. This is like
Truman,
the mountain
Cooper, and
scape.
Josie. I get it. Interpret that last one however you will. Cooper's made some comments on Josie in the pilot, and we also know there's some chemistry between Cooper and Dale. So however you want to interpret that one. But yeah, are you good to move on to Donna, Maddie, and of course, Man of the Hour, episode title derivation, whatever the word is, Harold Smith? So, Harold, our favorite new character. I'm just going to say that without any qualification. We joked so much in the last episode. I think humor is my way of not showing my actual thoughts at this point, because you don't know whether I like or dislike Harold. We memed on him last time, hardcore though, either way. But we have basically I think it was one scene with Harold and Donna, but it was super important, but also not a lot happened. Right? But it definitely set the mood.
Yeah, they get a nice little time with wine and Meals on Wheels just shared between the 2 of them. Looks actually very nice. So
they have a toast.
They do have a toast.
They have a toast to Laura. In our hearts and memories locked.
Yep.
Which, that's a way to put it.
That's one way to put it. And they proceed to read from Laura.
Laura is trapped, locked in our hearts and memories, forever preserved.
Either that or just Laura Palmer is in our hearts locked. Just more so, we really care about Laura Palmer, but there's a lot of shit we're not saying, and it's locked away. Well,
and then speaking of which,
we read a little bit of the diary this time.
That's where I was going to go with this. So Harold continuing to be very smooth. Very, very smooth with Donna.
Smooth like chunky peanut butter.
He's got the moves. He's like, hey, Donna, I think would be really appropriate right now? Let's read something from Laura's secret private diary that she hid from everyone. Let's read that right now. Opens it up, just turns to a random page. And I don't know if you want to. I typed the whole thing down. I don't know if you want to actually recite
I'll just summarize
it. But it's definitely not appropriate for the conversation.
Yeah, in truth, it's an ominous entry on Laura Palmer. Overall, talking about big men. That
how her insides are black and dark and soaked with these dreams.
And she is worried about confiding with Donna over it.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the whole thing with James, where James is just so dumb, and she didn't really want to tell James things. And Donna seems like it's almost an innocence. Whenever she brings up these dreams, which I'm assuming are mostly sexual fantasies, it seems like Donna just kind of giggles and doesn't really, know what to do about it. So Donna's, innocence versus Laura's, not innocence.
Yeah. It also doesn't help that he follows up, talking about this diary. He's saying that he just won't give it to the police after all. He's looked at it from, side to side.
No, he's looked at it. It's fine. Nothing suspicious. We're good.
Laura gave it to him. Laura gave it to him. This is personal.
Which reasoning do you think is better? Which argument are you more convinced by? Argument A, where it's nope, I read it. There's nothing to tell the police about. Or B, It was a gift.
Argument none, because honestly, like, I can't even, like, think or conceive that because of the line that he kind of continues on. Like, he talks about, like, people come to Harold with their stories. He's apparently a shut-in that spoke to Laura. We don't see him really talk to anyone else or see that this is a popular place. But yeah, people come to Harold.
He claims he has friends and lovers.
Yep. And he places them in a larger context, a living novel. This does not concern Donna whatsoever. There's no reason to dig this further, but I don't know what eldritch horror Harold is making in his basement, but I'm excited to see.
So you're liking Harold?
I'm liking the concept of Harold. If I ever met or heard like a quarter of the things that Harold had said, I would drastically move my distance.
Instead, Donna's just kind of like doing both. She's actively concerned, but then also like using him as like he's the cool, smart, good-looking guy I know. He's so nice, and she like smiles at him and everything. It's like
she only really questions the regular things, like the small mundane details. But when he like brings up like the sense of like he turns things into this like living novel, no need to elaborate.
Yeah, it's like when you're. It's like in animation and video games where you look at a character design and they're just so obviously evil. Like they got like piercing red eyes and like sharp teeth and like they're just like seem like they're like evil in some way. And all the people are like treating it like normal until eventually, whoa, they were a bad guy. That's kind of what it feels like is happening. And that's not saying whether Harold is or is not a bad guy, but he's definitely giving off vibes that should be suspicious. But so, Donna's like not commenting on.
No, Harold is, what was his name? Seymour from Final Fantasy X, indefinitely.
Yeah, for sure Seymour from Final Fantasy X. Donna! Lady Donna. Yeah, oof. I like how we're doing a Twin Peaks podcast, but the majority of our references are to video games. I don't know what the overlap of these audiences is, but
is there any like Twin Peaks fan-made games out there?
Have you heard anything called Deadly Premonition? Okay, it's technically not a Twin Peaks fan game, but it's the closest thing to plagiarism I've ever experienced. I quite enjoy it. Deadly Premonition, which is getting a sequel very soon, is basically your closest thing. There are Twin Peaks fan games, but you know, nothing like as published and notable and notorious as Deadly Premonition, which definitely I want to show you sometime.
I actually have heard that there was some form of collaboration with David Lynch and some developer trying to do a VR-based thing. I don't know much about it, but that might be something, Kalil, if you could look into. I'd appreciate it, because if I look into Twin Peaks...
Wouldn't surprise me.
If I look into Twin Peaks, I could find all sorts of spoilers, but maybe that's another thing we could potentially explore.
Sure. So the last scene I guess I had anything on, we get after Donna leaves Harold. Not really that suspicious as she should be. She goes to the diner. She meets with Maddie. She's back in full cigarette mode. In case you're worried that Donna was, quitting the habit, she's got the cigarette back out. Who said James and I couldn't see other people? Just acting all aloof. And she asks for Maddie's help. She tells her that Harold has the secret diary. And she says, hey, tell James that I'll get it with or without you. I don't need you guys, but please help. I don't need you guys, but help.
Yeah.
Smokes with her shades. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The fun part is that Donna does put her down that when she says with or without you, tell that to James. It makes me curious on whether or not the you is at Maddie, the you is at James, or if you is the universal you for just you.
The universal you. Always the universal you. Yeah. Overall, what were your thoughts on the episode? You mentioned with season 1 that every episode was getting better. Do you feel like season 2 has kept that up for you? That every episode is better than the one that came before it?
So far, the momentum is being very nice. I'm not feeling too clustered with all these characters. I'm feeling more intrigued. We'll see how that will necessarily go soon. But no, it keeps getting better and better.
Cool. So the last question I have for you, Professor.
Yes.
Who do you believe killed Laura Palmer?
The Society of Bobs, between Officer Bob, between Bobby, between Robert, and the 12 other Bobs that are a shadowy organization in the background. The organization Bobs had killed Laura Palmer. Through what means or what reasons, I don't know. Who are we to understand the realm of Bob?
I think they went bobbing for apples and something went horribly wrong.
Heh. Horribly, horribly wrong.
Okay, bye.
Bye.